there is a particular importance because, government digital services are moving online. And there's also a need to quickly pivot whenever, there's changes. And more importantly, it needs to reach every citizen in Singapore. So the other thing that we do is also capability building among public service officers. So we provide resources for our colleagues in the whole of Gov, and mostly we do this via awareness building and events. The ally team follows the ally team believes in the social model of disability. So what that means is you only consider disabled because there's a mismatch between individual and physical environment. So to put it bluntly, if I will share an example, is you don't assess a fish's ability to climb a tree because that's not the environment that the fish is built for. Yeah, so that's bluntly how I'd put it. So within this space, right? Obviously, the persons with disability community, or PWDs for short, as well as seniors and the neurodiverse individuals are important. So I'm really excited to share this space with my co-panelists, and looking forward to our chat today.
Thank you so much for your lovely and insightful introductions. For all our viewers, actually, our screen share is not working. So if you do want to see our slideshow, it's in the chat. We have the QR code and the website where you can ask questions. Yeah, if you have any, and we'll do our best to incorporate it during the panel discussion. And there's also a Q&A session that will happen around 8:40. So you have ample time for your questions to be answered. So now with the lovely introductions, let's begin with the discussion. From the sharings, we can see that each one of you has contributed significantly to the Tech for Good space. But that leads me to wonder, what brought you into this industry in the beginning?
Are we going ladies first?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Be my guest, since your opinion anyway.
Okay, so I think I'll take this. It actually started when I was in school, in university. I'm actually not from the tech side. My degree is in sports science and management. So one of the modules that we did was in para sports, and I was attached. Yeah, I was attached to a team called the Goalball team. It's a new sport at the point of time. So they are visually impaired, and they were starting a sport called Goalball, which were going to be featured over in Asian Para Games that year. So I attended with a bunch of friends who are visually impaired, right? And they were going to learn about Goalball for the very first time. So one of the goalball coaches were invited. So he was from overseas. So he was invited to share about goalball to myself and the other athletes. And believe it or not, they actually shared it via PowerPoint.
Oh.
So you can imagine my disbelief. And I could see like my friends, they were like, I have no idea what's going on. He's explaining the court and he's showing, okay, this is where the goalpost is over on the PowerPoint. I'm like, there's something not right here. So it was a 3-day course, right? So immediately after the first day, I went down to Daiso and I bought like those small, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar, maybe the generation gets quite big, but it's like a whiteboard. It's like a portable whiteboard. It's really small, like A4 size. So I bought a whiteboard, I bought plasticine and like a basket where I cut into two. So I fashioned a 3D model of the court using that. And the plasticine I use it is so that when they touch and feel the cord, it will not hurt their fingers, because when you cut the basket, it's like they have rough edges. Yeah. So apparently this was the start of my career, actually. So when I started with, at the point of time, Singapore Disability Sports Council, it was what got me a job there in the first place.
Oh, wow.
And 5-6 years later, here I am, after doing some tech courses, I'm engagement manager with the Allied team. I'm pretty sure my other two panelists have incredibly inspiring stories too. So let's hear from them.
I'll go next. I think Alvin will be more inspiring, so just let me pat the middle. I think before accessibility and inclusion gained this widespread awareness over the past few years, right, especially in system design, there's this discipline called HFE, or Human Factors Engineering. So it really involves the interaction of human abilities, the expectations, limitations with your work environment and with systems design. So when I started out work, right, I worked on warships. I worked on these missile corvettes in my early years. They are very tiny 60-meter vessels, and they need to accommodate about 50 over people. And then there's the sleeping quarters, the living quarters, the war rooms, command rooms, battle stations. So suffice to say, right, space was a premium. So there was a lot of HFP elements that went into the designs and placements of the equipment, the design factor. Most commonly tuned was the human size in terms of percentile. So how high the ceiling must be so that 90% of people will not need to bend down to walk. How close the chairs must be to command console so there's enough leg room. Your 80th percentile elbow length doesn't nudge your co-sailor's rib cage. So I think what I'm trying to say is that this kind of human-centric design, work around accessibility and inclusion, obviously takes place outside of the digital and tech realm as well. So while I personally am not involved directly in accessibility and inclusion, I think it's important in every aspect of the work of the service journey to consider these two aspects, even more so when doing work around the public sector for citizens. Alvin.
Oh, okay, sure. Thanks. Actually, nice to hear what Chong and he has shared, because I think I see a lot of common points between us. Not so much in accessibility, but really going back history. So actually, I started at A-Star. When I graduated, actually, I started at A-Star because I studied computer engineering in NTU. And from A-Star, actually, I went on to IDA. If you're familiar with the current IMDA before it was merged, IDA was the one half of the IMDA, focusing on infocom development. So and that's where I was. And my work back then was actually focused very much on technology scanning, technology foresight, which means, right, actually I look up for emerging technologies, understand the potential impact and implications and the use of these technologies, right? And then I sort of like assess it, provide analysis, and probably advise other government agencies on how you could potentially leverage on this. So, I mean, on that note, maybe just to share, I mean, I'm among the first person to use social media in Singapore, I guess. So I was a social media expert back then, but I think now the natives are the experts, so I don't say anything anymore. But along the way, I mean, one of the things that I picked up was actually tech for good. Because as you analyze the technology, right, you realize that actually there's a huge potential in technology being used to further the benefits of the less privileged. It could be person with disabilities, could be elderly, it could be low income, etc. So there's a huge potential there. So actually that got me thinking, how can I use my expertise to bring benefit to the needy in Singapore? And after 7 years in IDA, an opportunity came along. So it was to join SG Enable to help set up a Center for Assistive Technology called TechAble. I'm not sure how many of you have went there before, but I think Kim, sorry, that day I was in the meeting, so I couldn't say hi to you much. Yeah, but anyway, so that's why after we setting up, so that's where I started into assistive technology. So in the setting of the TechAble Center in SG Enable. And along the way, we realized there's another piece of the puzzle is missing, accessibility. Because I mean, you can have the best technology, or you can best assistive technology. If the content is not accessible, then that's as good as nothing. Like yeah. So that's where we start to see, hey, we also need to push a little bit on the accessibility part of things. So I think just now Kim mentioned about the Go Ball. Interestingly, right, when I first joined TechAble, one of the first things that I did, right, was actually to use the Braille printer to print out a description of the whole of Go Ball and pass it to APG. I think back then. That was in 2015, if I recall. I'm not sure whether is that the year you started.
I don't remember, but I'm telling you seriously, I believe a lot in good energy, and the fact that we are here today just speak good work that we're doing. Yeah.
Correct. So there's when you say Go Ball, it really brings back the memory. One of the first things I did, a Braille printout of a Go Ball, so that, and they brought it with them to the court so that they can show the other person visually impairment exactly what Go Ball is about. Because there's a layout, there's a description in Braille of what the game is about. So they actually use it, and I was very happy to be able to contribute. And to date, right, this piece still stands in my TechAble Center for people to see, what can you do with the Braille printer. So that's why I thought I see the synergies with what he was saying. Yeah. So and over the past 7 years, I dare say that, I mean, the work has been very fulfilling and it's never ending, because there's simply too many barriers, right, that we need to lower, such that person with disabilities and those the more needy folks, right, can actually access their environments. So similar to Kim, we believe the social model. So it's really about how can we prepare the environment such that they can participate. And just so you mentioned something about human factors engineering, that really reminds me of a very interesting comic. So I mean, if you search for it, right, you find one comic that says that if the world was designed by wheelchair users, all non-wheelchair users, right, are the person with disabilities now. because for them the HIV, right, is that the height for me is just above my wheelchair. So everyone else, oh, so poor thing, now you are disabled because the environment doesn't cater for you. So I think thanks would be like that somehow reminds me of that comic. Yeah.
Absolutely,
So sorry.
absolutely. It's like right-handedness and left-handedness, to be honest.
Exactly. That's right. Yeah. So I mean, I've gone on long enough. So this is how I actually sort of started and still doing, and I think the work is really not done yet. Yeah.
Wow, everybody has such interesting stories about how they began. And you guys have spent so much time in this industry. It really makes me wonder, what are some of the biggest challenges you faced? Perhaps Mrs. Kim, would you like to begin?
Yeah, sure. I think one of the biggest challenges is trying to convince people, not just the government, but everyone, that accessibility, inclusion is everyone's responsibility. It's not just the government. The government can be a catalyst, yes. But everyone is responsible to create an inclusive society, right? So, and I guess personally for me, what I'm trying to drive home in my life is like, when you're doing something, could you take a minute to actually put yourself in the shoes of someone who maybe has lost his sight, or someone who has no use of their limbs, or someone who is incredibly intelligent, but they cannot verbalize their thoughts. Yeah. So it helps to create a sense of empathy, and also to not, sometimes as tech people, you want to take off a backlog of codes that you need to fix, but then you don't want to lose sight on the human aspect of it. So it's important to always, go back and, think about all these situations whereby you can get an empathetic perspective and view and lens to what you actually create. And the fact that we're in government is more important. So, yeah.
Why do you think? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Alvin.
Actually, maybe can I just second what Kim just mentioned? Because
of course.
I think it's really, one of the biggest challenges, right, is to design for the ages. So I think we live in a world of majority. I mean, we are used to having design considerations for the majority, but at the long tail, right, I mean, there are always the people in the minority who will not benefit from all this technology advancement, etc., because it's caters for the masses. So I mean, we talk about data science, we talk about artificial intelligence, etc., right? They are all based on a huge data set of the norm. But what happens to the rest? So I think the deliberate intention to cater for the ages, I think that's one of the biggest challenge to do. I mean, the mindset change that we need. Yeah.
Maybe I can add on a different perspective also. So my challenge is real world challenges, because I feel a challenge around tech for public good is really to chart the work against this soft value capture. How do you quantify and qualify citizen benefit or underprivileged benefits? And these are real questions to answer around fiscal responsibilities. Like, for example, do you know that we are really lucky to have platform screen doors on all of our train stations? Like, how many of you remember the times when the overground train stations did not have those platform screen doors, you see? And obviously it poses obviously it poses a safety risk, like more somberly, it at least deters or makes it harder for people to commit suicide. And I mean, in every country, there will be statistics, right, on how unfortunate lives were lost at train stations due to people falling over onto tracks. And especially for those full height screens in underground stations, right, it can totally remove the chance of this happening. Yet always the cost benefit analysis differs from country to country, from government to government, because different countries put different values on human life and health and well-being. Yes, in government, there is a monetary value on human life, and it's used in many, many ways and covers so many things. Like, for example, VPF is one of them, a value for value of preventing a fatality. And of course, my work, I've done so many rounds of CBA with transport operators around platform screen doors, right? And for the poorer countries, obviously the ROI doesn't match up. Now, this is only an example of using platform screen doors, but obviously this influences a wide range of disciplines across like economics, healthcare, adoption policies, obviously insurance, worker safety, and most importantly also accessibility and inclusion, because there's a cost for this, and it's always fiscal responsibility to sort of balance this to deliver best benefit of the public funds now. So it really is a challenge.
Actually, I quite like the point about the cost benefit analysis, because exactly because we are talking about minority, the analysis would never be in their favor. Hence, when it comes to the utilization of funds, right, for me, because I come from the government side as well, so I understand you need to be prudent in the utilization of funds. But sometimes really that, I mean, a human's life or human's rights, right, cannot really be assessed very quantitatively in terms of the cost benefit analysis. So yeah, unfortunate case, but yeah, that's why I think we need to take a more deliberate effort in the area. Yeah.
So, Mr. CK, you've worked in Singapore and London, and you seem to have a lot of experience in comparing or having access to different public sectors. So, in your opinion, do you think Singapore is an accessible country?
Wow. I think there is definitely ways to go. There is work to be done, but I am seeing the awareness being gradually elevated in Singapore. But just to draw comparisons across like the Western countries and the Asian countries, I think the Western was a bit more, I don't like to say the word woke, but woke this idea,
Yeah.
and they are actually sculpting it into their regulations. Like for example, in Europe, have a lot of regulations around this kind of things, and it not only it's a lot of stick and carrots involved in covering these kind of policies, and I think Europe is a region that has done quite well. And yeah, to answer your question, I think there's still work to be done, but we're getting there.
Wow, perfect. So, Mr. Alvin, actually, one of the audience was wondering, how useful has your degree in computer engineering been to you now? And how much has it contributed to your strength in technology foresight in the assistive technology domain?
It's a very interesting question because I mean, I do think of it sometimes. So I would say that in computer engineering, it definitely prepares you for with the fundamentals, the necessary technical expertise, right, to understand technology. And that in itself, right, allows you to make very quick analysis of whether this technology is useful or not. So I think that's really the part of engineering that really helps a lot, because I mean, it creates your logical thinking. You analyze, okay, so A, B, and C, this is the outcome. Does it help me achieve what I want to do in the end? So that kind of training is really very useful. And to be honest, right, ever since I joined IDA, right, I did much less technical work, but what I have in the years before that actually prepares me for me to understand the underlying technology very well. So when I see some new technology, straight away I can understand. I know how this thing works down to the fundamental layers. So I think that's where the value of the engineering education is. Yeah. So yeah. So of course, okay. So in other words, I think the so-called more generalist route. There are some who actually go very deep in and they're very good at the coding and everything. Unfortunately, I can't do that anymore. Yeah, but yeah, there you go. Yeah.
So would you say that this is something you learned from just an engineering degree? If somebody were to do another technical degree, do you think they would still have the abilities to do a role similar to yours?
Sure, I would think so, because I mean, among all the AT practitioners that I met, right, not everyone's an engineer. So their education, I mean, their academic stuff. There's I think there's even wait, what are they doing? I think there's some engineers, there's some teachers, there's some therapies even. So I mean, so it really depends. So anything, and yeah, what I say is that as long as you have the the heart. I mean, it was what you mentioned just now, right? As long as you have the heart, right, and you can just apply whatever your knowledge is, right, in the system, it definitely can help in this case, person with disabilities. Yeah.
Ah, okay. Mrs. Kim, actually, I've done some research and I've discovered that you've also not only helped people with visual impairment, but you've traveled quite a lot to assist para-athletes with their daily activities, and you've nurtured numerous relationships with them. During this memorable journey, what would you say was the most unexpected thing you learned about their daily lives that you wish more people knew about?
That's an interesting question, and that's a good question, actually. And I would like to tie this back to the degree question as well, because I'm from a non-technical background, and I'd like to encourage the students who are listening in, think about it more as the experience that you're building, not what you're studying in school. So there's always something to learn in the experience. With your colleagues, with your classmates, with your, tutors, lecturers, or even things when you're volunteering outside. There's always things to learn with your mentors as well. So don't discount real life experience just because, you don't have a tech background. It's definitely possible, and I'm an example. So to answer your questions with regards to, my past life, I was once in Dubai for a competition, and the sports arena that we were sent to did not have accessible facilities. So they retrofitted accessibility. So what they did was there was like a huge sand patch like outside, and they actually had to build platforms, wooden platforms out into that huge sand patch and create like a, I think 3 basketball size of space for the athletes to go in. So the problem with that is the platform actually sank because it's sand, right? I mean, it's not going to sink like, totally break everything, but it sank a bit.
Yeah.
And the athletes were saying, oh, this shouldn't be right, because if it sinks, then the court is not balanced. And
Yes.
for the particular sport that was taking care of that time, the alignment of the court and the stability of the court is very important in terms of precision. So they held a meeting, and they said that the meeting was to brainstorm how we can actually make this more accessible. And because the athletes were competing the next day, there was only one person in a wheelchair who was attending that meeting, and everyone else was like non-PWD, I would say. So everyone was giving their contribution on how they can make this place more accessible. And it came to the guy that was in a wheelchair, and he said, have you guys thought about an accessible toilet? You see, nobody said, because everyone else didn't worry about a toilet.
Yeah.
But someone in a wheelchair, for you to go to the toilet, and there's no ramps, and there's a curb, and then you have to open the door while you're wheeling yourself in. And if the seat is not the right level, if you don't have the right facilities to move yourself to the toilet bowl, it's going to be an issue. And if you look at your Maslow's needs of hierarchy, right, that safety part, which is your very bottom, is for someone who with a disability compared to someone who's non-PWD. So that's why I want to drive home the point that in every decision that we make, right, try to include persons with disabilities. Okay, and I say this with, and I think that my co-panelists can agree as well. None of us here, the voice that we are using, the voice doesn't belong to us. We are stewards of this voice. And as much as you can, if you want to solve a problem in this space, you need to speak to someone who is from the community to ensure that their needs are well represented. So yeah.
Does it happen often that a lot of the times people who are not from the PWD community are consulted about PWD decisions?
You can say so, yes. But it also, it's multifaceted, right? Like if you have a meeting that is located at a place which is not accessible, like inviting someone on a wheelchair and the place is not accessible, so you're making it harder for them to go to the place and make their voices heard. So you have to be also aware on where do you actually conduct this meeting. Yeah.
I believe that tends to slip out of people's mind pretty often. You wouldn't consider that. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. Another question I had for Mr. CK actually. So you're saying that Singapore has a way to go in terms of being more accessible, but how much more accessible do you think Singapore is now compared to 10 years ago?
Oh, at this point, am I quite in tune with the advancement we have been doing in this space around Singapore? So I really can't comment, but I think the way that the public sector is transforming in delivering their services, delivering type of public good, is also taking into consideration various facets. Like, I mean, look at Kim and her team and the ally team. We work for government, we consult. They consult for projects in government to sort of not only raise awareness, but put really critical steps in place in the projects at the design phase, at the implementation phase, all the way down to rolling the services out to the public. So I think a lot of things is going on, a lot of things are happening, and it's not only just accessibility and inclusion. There's also like the ESG aspects, the green aspects, and all these are ideals that I think it's starting to be surfaced to the fore more commonly. And it has to go all the way up to the management level. It has to go all the way up to the ministers. They have to champion this. Only then can we see it kind of change. trickle all the way down to the citizens.
Oh, yes. Mr. Alvin, do you have anything to comment on that?
Yeah, so maybe I can just share a little more from the anecdotal point of view. Because to be honest, we don't really, or at least at the moment, we don't have anything that measures the accessibility of things. But I dare say that in my 7 years in Edge Enable and a couple of years before that, I think we're starting to see more changes. There's a more intentional consideration, right, to look into the accessibility of whether is it in the physical domain or is it in the digital domain. I mean, very simple, good case in point. If you look at, for those who take bus, right, you look around you, right? Now, 100% of the buses have the ramps. So that's one very simple thing done by the bus operators, right, to ensure that the bus is accessible to wheelchair users. I think they're also on track, right, to actually reach 100% accessibility for bus stops. So if you notice, actually all the bus stops will slowly undergo renovation such that the last mile, definitely the wheelchair user will be able to wheel themselves onto a bus stop and wait for the bus. So these are so I think if you go back 10, 20 years, there's a chance that a wheelchair user may not be able to even get out of the house. But in today's context, right, they are able to. And even for even person with visual impairment, they can get around very easily. And that's partly because of the advancement of the technology. But I dare say that, I mean, in terms of the acceptance and the willingness to support them, right, it goes a long way to enable them to be integrated with the community. So yeah, definitely a lot of advancement. Can't measure, and I dare say that we still have a lot more to go.
Yeah.
Just want to add also, I think I've been stuck this bit of info nugget in my brain. So not only so the things that you can see all these ramps, right? Those are things that are helping the mobility disabled or PWDs. So we can actually see those changes. But there are a lot of things that's going that's also undergoing change. Like for example, I work a lot with the dementia realm, and one of the things that is changing also is the inclusion of dementia-friendly neighborhoods, communities, and also I think by the end of this year, every MRT station in Singapore will be dementia-friendly go-to points. So that means to say that every one of the staff, they are being trained to handle dementia the people and guide them or at least like work with them to find their way back, that kind of thing. And it's the training, it's the awareness and proliferating of thinking that I think needs to take root.
It's great to see that Singapore actually has advanced, even though we have more to work towards. And it's almost 8:40, so we are about to move on to the Q&A. But before that starts, I have one last question. So I've been really curious about how you guys manage your time and effort to contribute so much to the tech for good industry, even during such hectic times, because we as university students are in the most hectic time for a semester, and we were hoping to learn from you maybe on how to manage our time and effort. Mrs. Kim, would you like to begin again?
Oh, wow. I'm borrowing this phrase because I felt that it's good and, you know, it hits the spot. So it's not a phrase that I created, but one of the members that I heard from in GovTech. So he said that work-life balance is a myth.
That's true.
What's important is work-life effectiveness. And I was like, wow, that's mind blown, right? So yeah, think about work-life effectiveness and, you know, try to reframe your mindset a bit. And, you know, if you do work that is in line with what you enjoy, then you can have work-life effectiveness. So yeah.
Sounds like a myth as well.
So maybe should add on, and I totally agree with Kim. Yeah. I mean, work-life effectiveness is definitely something rather than work-life balance, that's for sure. So maybe just to add on to that point, I think what I would say is that it's about what means the most to you. So when it means a lot to you, right? You don't find it a chore. So you will find ways and means, right? Whether it's pockets of time or even to sit down for a long period of time to get the things done. As long as it's something that you feel for in that sense. So I mean, to be honest, for me, right, assistive technology, accessibility, and ultimately to help that one person with disability. That's what drives me in my work. And when that happens, right, I mean, yeah, you will get it done. Yeah, no matter what, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Fully agree with you. I mean, I think ultimately the word that I picked up from you is what drives you. So if you are doing something that really speaks to you and it really drives you, you will take the time to go and do it. It's not just about delivering your work, it's delivering it well. And like in my work with the dementia patients, I could sit down with them and talk for hours. And it not only helps you do your work better, it makes you a better person, builds your character. And even this panel where I'm chatting with you guys, it's something that I think it's not the ECA, you know, it's really part of what you are as a core person, and just building on that and let that guide the way you work. I think ultimately goes back to Tim's work-life effectiveness.
Yes, definitely. Actually, one of our audience members were asking, you've told us so much about how we can be more inclusive and just given us so many stories that want us to make Singapore more inclusive. How can we begin? How can we start?
Have a conversation with someone from the PWD community. That's the first thing. You are involved in the community, and so that you can understand their needs a little bit better. And also it also helps to guide that, you know, this voice that you carry is so yes, that's the main thing. Have a friend in the PWD.
Okay.
Yeah, so similar to that, right? I mean, I would say that in one word, empathy will describe actually what you need to do. But of course, it's easier said than that. So maybe I just want to share a very simple story, right? So when I first started also, I was talking to a prof who I think he's from Poland, who teaches person with disabilities, visual impairment to be exact. So he asked us a very, very fun, very interesting question, which I think I'll ask the whole group here, think about it for a while. If I were to ask you to draw a tree, how will you draw it? Just give me 5 seconds. Okay. If you are like me, right, most people, right, you would draw a tree, you would draw maybe the stem, and then you draw a curly thing to be the tree, right? Now, if think about it, for a person who is blind from birth, how would they draw a tree? Okay, give a few seconds again. So then he told us the answer, and to be honest, that answer totally blew my mind away.
Yes.
They draw a circle. And why do they draw a circle? Because for a person who is blind from birth, they have never seen a tree from afar. They wouldn't know there's a stem. They wouldn't know there's branches and leaves, etc.
Yes.
But they ever hug a tree before. So to them, right, a tree feels like a circle because that's their experience. For a person with vision impairment, through that sense of touch, they will have only ever hugged a tree and they thought the tree is a circle. So when they say this story, right, it struck me very strongly because as much as I push for empathy and say that it's a function that it's something that we should possess. Ultimately, right, you still need to talk to the person with disability because there's no way we can be 100% in their shoes. You have to ask them about what they think, what they feel, and what they need. And then from there, that's how we develop our solutions, craft our services, etc. Right, so to better serve them. So yes, definitely talk to someone. Yeah.
So if we've already spoken to someone, empathized with someone, the audience member is asking, as an NUS student who wants to get into accessibility in tech, what else can they do to strengthen their experience?
NUS students studying developing courses? Like what course are you taking? That would be my first question, because there's a lot of ways, right?
Yes.
There's a lot of ways that you can add value to the space. So if you're a developer, there are courses online that can teach you about semantic HTML and how it's important. There's also, and I think one way that you can also try to simulate what it feels like to be in someone who's visually impaired. Try to navigate a website with a keyboard, not your mouse. Try to navigate your website with a keyboard. So put the screen brightness all the way to low, and then try to navigate. I want to see whether, some forms that you submit, can you actually do it or not? And I want to raise this issue as important because, can you imagine during COVID situation, there were grants being given out for people who lost their job, right? And what if another situation happens and there's only a certain amount of grants within a particular month that can be claimed? And someone who's visually impaired loses their job, and for the life of them, they try to submit on the form, but because the form is not accessible, they lose out on the grants that's going to help them to buy, for daily needs. So it's not because they are not deserving of help, but we are not helping them to get there. Yeah. So yes, there are courses online to help you with accessibility, and if you're more on the empathy side, there's design And, you can go through the volunteer route and like I mentioned just now, speak to persons with disabilities. And the space is quite varied, and you will have value regardless of, which line you take.
Mrs. Kim, I actually had another question for you. So as I was doing research on mixed reality, I realized that there's a misconception that is very similar to virtual reality. What are the biggest difference between the two? Since you're a mixed reality immersive graduate, what would you say is the biggest difference? And what advancement are you most excited about that you think will make a significant change in the tech for good industry?
Well, I haven't coded XR for a while, but okay, let me just give this a shot, right? So VR is when you are fully immersed. So you just have your headset and everything is, you only have the controllers and everything is virtual, right? There's no real thing that you can interact with. For augmented reality, it's very much like Pokemon Go. So if you play Pokemon Go, that's augmented reality. So a virtual object that is superimposed on a physical environment. And everything that's in between, like if you've watched Marvel and if you watch Iron Man, you have Jarvis and he does this, right? You see like all that. So anything in between is mixed reality.
Oh, okay.
So that's the short answer of it. What am I most excited about? As someone working in accessibility, I'm always wondering, for VR, which is a product or digital service that is visually rich, right? How is it that someone who's blind in both eyes is able to experience that?
Yes.
So for me, that would be the pinnacle of what mixed reality can actually do, to actually bridge that gap between someone who's sighted and non-sighted. So, do I have an answer of that? No, I don't think the tech is there yet, but it might reach sometime soon. Maybe in your generation. So yeah.
Yeah, hopefully that'll be amazing. Oh, Mr. CK, so for you, I've noticed that you have a lot of certifications from very well-known companies, Amazon, GovTech, Singapore Computer Society. What would you say would have been the most helpful course to you?
Well, I can't list one for sure, to be honest. I mean, all of these are very varied and different. There's project management, there is more tech focused one, there's more soft skills focused one. But I would just like to take this chance, right, to also talk about, I mean, since you are talking about accessibility and inclusion, right, start thinking beyond what you're doing in the space. Like accessibility, like you mentioned, is hardware, not soft and hardware, right? So accessibility actually extends beyond the actual digital and tech itself. Like, for example, part of what I'm doing is an AI app to estimate the risk of dementia and mild cognitive impairment. Now, when we were building this app, right, obviously we had a lot of user journey mapping through the personas of elderly across a wide range of cognitive spectrum, right? And some of the things that we did, like we selected stylus with no side buttons. In fact, we chose one from Stadler, the writing instruments maker. We chose one that is hexagonal in shape with yellow and black alternating stripes, the classic pencil. And we chose a tablet that best mimics the pen and paper drawing experience. And all this is done to reduce the usability friction. After all, our target audience are majority not digital natives. So we got sort of think their fields, but go and engage them, right, and understand what's the pain points to reduce the friction. And we designed like specific regions of palm rejection, built audio and visual cues, video instructions with personal role figures. And we ran on these user things at decks, at RCs, we spoke to random Ama Akong, hanging out at Kopitiam. And all these are meant to be just the design process for the app itself, right? But how do we fully realize the value of such a project? And we need to get the app out to more people, and we need the AI to be accurate enough to diagnose more people, right? And then diagnose already, we need them to follow up with the memory clinic to manage the disease of dementia. Now, this is the service journey, right? And a lot of times when you start doing your work, you just look at the piece in front of you. I got to develop an app. I got to think about accessibility and inclusion from the onset of this design of this app. But it spans so much wider than your job scope itself. Like, for example, imagine at the start of the funnel, we have 100% of the people who sign up to take the test on the app. 10% called before the test to cancel, cause second thoughts of fear, because of taboo, like dementia, choice, that kind of thing. And then come the test date, only 70% show up to do a test. And after a test, maybe you have typically about 20% diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment. And we prescribe follow-up referrals for them to manage the disease, right? And typically after that, 65% of them don't do the follow-up. So remember the plans when this app wants to enable graceful aging in place, better quality of life, reduce care burden, yada yada, and you put in all the sort of accessibility features into the app, the beneficiaries still fall short of potential. So I think it's important really to think about accessibility and inclusion at every stage of the design of the service journey, outside of what you're actually tasked to do, and how to allay the concerns at every interaction point to ensure the right conversion rate. And I feel that none of my expert certifications taught me this. It's really going out there, talking to people, understanding the pain points, understanding where you're going short in the ultimate goal, and have a sight and vision on what you're trying to achieve with what you're doing now. Because a lot of times your KPIs, your goals are just the first step. Like developing the app, that's just the first step to ultimately delivering the value benefit. Yeah, I think that's a bit roundabout answer, but yeah, I think you should go and just pick up certifications that you think would help you, but really it's like what Kim mentioned, is outside of your studies, is the pieces that you interact with that really defines you as a person.
Yeah, and so to add to Chong Yan, experience is actually more important than the certifications that you take. Since we're on the topic of experience, why don't you apply for an internship at GovTech and then say that you want to join the amazing accessibility enabling team? So yes, if you want to work with us and, a team which is quite frankly, very, very passionate. Yeah, just apply and you can find us over at Careers at Gov and apply for an internship here. I'll say this for sure because we had just one person. She's a tapper and she loves her job. So that's great, right? So yes, we hope to see some of you guys do some internships here. Yeah.
Definitely. And since we're almost approaching the end of the fireside chat, I had one last question for you guys. So looking back at yourself now with the tremendous amount of experience you have, what advice would you give your younger self or anybody out there who wants to enter the tech for good world but does not know how to start?
Maybe I can go with this first. I think it's if you look at my young self, I wish that I thought about what I want to do earlier, to be honest.
Oh, yes.
I think many of us, right? I'm not sure about the current generation, but our generation is really, when we study, right, we say you must do your best, etc., etc. But we never really think beyond that much. Exactly what do I want to achieve when I grow up? What do I want to do? I think the millennium today is much different. So I would say that try to think about what do you want out of your life as early as possible, right? I know this is easier said than done. As what Kim mentioned, right? Experience plays a long part. If you have a lot of experience, you can think this much easier. But if you can understand this as much as early as possible, right? I would say that will definitely help you along the way. Yeah. So you know what course you want to take, you know what skills you want to pick up, and then there you go. I think by the time you reach your 20s, you should be pretty good at that. Yeah.
I think I'll just repeat whatever you say because I feel 100% now. But one, study harder, opens doors. Right, so get to know yourself. What motivates you? What touches you? Anchor that, and then build your experiences around that. And volunteer, go for courses, like what Alvin said. Do things around what you think is you as a core person, and then the rest will come quite naturally. But yes, study hard.
So it's clear that we should have a good plan of the future. We should empathize with the PWD and try to interact with them to increase accessibility in Singapore and in every aspect in their lives. Thank you so much for all your sharings. And before we end the day, are you guys comfortable with a group picture?
Yeah,
sure.
All right, so audience members, if you're comfortable, please switch on your cameras and then one of us will take a screenshot. Actually, I'm not sure who is taking the screenshot, so let me just ask.
I'll take the screenshot.
Okay, thank you.
We just give like a few seconds for everyone to turn on their cameras.
Yeah, actually, I think you need to unpin us so that we see the whole gallery.
Oh no, I got the gallery view on. So
right, cool.
Okay, let's take the photo in 3, 2, 1. Okay, fantastic. Thanks, everyone.
Yes, thank you to everybody for attending and choosing to distress with us on week 13, and to the speakers for giving us such valuable insights and taking time out of their day to do so. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, good night. Thanks for having us here.
Good night.
Bye.